Hey, what's up, everyone? Did some searching online and found out or figured out that there's not really a video on rebuilding a 2018 YZ65, which is what you're looking at. This is my son's mod bike. He broke the main shaft in it over the weekend riding, and so the clutch is just flopping around in it right now. There's nothing left of it. So I'm gonna record the disassembly of the motor and putting it back together, and this is just how I do it. It's not the right way, not the wrong way. It's just how I do it. So don't beat me up in the comments over if I do something that you don't agree with or that you think should be done differently. Like I said, this is just how I do it. There's multiple ways to skin a cat, and I'm gonna show you how I skin mine. Let's get started. All right, so first things first, you need to wash it. You're going to take apart a muddy bike. I like to use lubricant to soak down the motor and get any grease or oil or anything that's on the motor. It loosens it up, makes it come off, helps clean it really good. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so now that the bike is clean and ready to be worked on, we're going to take the seat off. And next, I'm going to pop the gas tank off. All right, next, I'm going to drain the oil. And for those of you that already know this trick, I guess disregard, keep doing what you're doing. But for those of you that don't, this brake pedal is always in the way because the 10 mil is down here that you need to get to drain it. So what I do is I expand the brake pads back here. So the screwdriver, just get in there and kind of gently open it up. Looks like I got a piece of my rag stuck in there. Yep, gently separate the brake pads, which will then allow you to drop the pedal, and you can take your screwdriver and just wedge it between the case and the pedal to hold it down, which will give you open access to your 10 mil. It does put the brake pedal in your cup, but I mean, what's the lesser of two evils? I'm just going to snug that because I don't want it to sit here and drip and make a mess. Alright, next is a coolant. It's a 8 mil at the bottom of the water pump. We typically don't get that right off the bat or very much. Take open the radiator cap. See, it's just dripping now. If you get a lot of coolant right away, like it just starts pouring like that, you got a leak somewhere because it's getting air that it shouldn't be getting. Okay, try and tip this a little bit. All right, so when when I do these motors, I try to do take as much shit off the motor as I can while it's in the bike. I don't like to pull the motor out and have to try and hold it, you know, the whole motor with one arm and bust something loose with the other hand or whatever, you know. It just makes a pain in the ass. So my recommendation is do as much as you can with the motor in the bike, and then you get to the point where things are a lot easier when it's out of the bike. The use of like an engine stand or those square blocks that people make out of 2x4s, those are really handy. I don't have either one of those. I just kind of do them on the bench. So they do help though. If you have them, use them. I don't. Once again, personal preference. Doesn't make it right, doesn't make it wrong. But all right, so I'm going to get into this clutch cover, and I'm going to show you what the actual problem is. And we'll take a look at that. Okay. So, like I said before, my son came up to me and, "Dad, my clutch doesn't work," and his clutch lever's flopping around on the bar, and I just thought he fried the clutch. But historically speaking, my son is not hard on clutches at all. But you can see where the clutch hit the inside of the cover. And he says it didn't make any noise, but that says otherwise. And you should not be able to grab the entire clutch and just pull it out like this. It should not do that. That end of the shaft is broke off and all the splines are all chewed up, and so sucks. The hub is messed up as well. You can see the hub's all chewed up inside there. Hope I'm holding it right so you can see that. Basket still looks good, so that's good. We'll order a new hub, and pressure plate should be fine. And a new trans shaft. Okay. So that is what's actually wrong here, and that's what's getting us diving into this bike. Now, before I go any further, I'm not sure if you can see inside of this inside that shaft, inside that hole there's a little ball bearing in there. Okay, be careful. You lose that real easy. And like, not to the motor, but to the ground. I mean, I guess you could lose it to the motor too, but there's not really too many places it can go except down. But yeah, you lose it to the ground. I've lost one and I had to replace it. So yeah, don't lose that little ball in there. All right, we're gonna try and get it out right now. There it is. Okay, so just a little ball bearing. Okay, goes on the end of the push rod right here, so that your hub can spin, or your pressure plate can spin on the end of the push rod when you engage the clutch. And then there's another rod in there beyond that. I don't know if we're going to get it right now or not. There it is. Okay. And that's the other rod. All right, so we got our pipe out, got our pipe off. Moving on, I think I'm going to spin the bike around and do the stator side, get that all taken out. So I'll be back. All right, so I got the bike turned around, and we're going to start pulling the stator off. 8mm. Okay, I usually just take an impact and bust this nut loose. I didn't pump it up enough. Oh, it's coming off. All right. Ooh, that nut's hot. Okay. And then we'll take our flywheel puller, and this is a reverse thread. What you would normally do to loosen, you tighten. If I remember correctly. Yeah, turn it left to tighten. And that goes straight in. Oh, you know what? I left this washer in the bottom. Try this again. Get that washer out. Like I said, I do as much as I can with the motor in the bike. And this should pop right off like that. All right. Some of this motor might come apart easier for me than it will for some of you guys. This motor was just apart. I'd have to take the number plate off to look at the hours, but I think it's got about 13 hours on it. And we had the motor apart already and rebuilt it, put new crank and bearings and everything in it. So things might come apart like that, might come off a little easier than yours. It might take a little bit of prying to get yours to come off. It might be kind of hardened onto there from being on there for a while. But before you go any further, you want to take and note the timing mark here, that little tab hanging down, and there's another timing mark down here that you can use. You can see a little blue mark on my stator. That's so I know where the timing is for my stator. You notice the stator's got a little bit of wiggle room to you can adjust the timing on it. So mark where yours is at, and you use those tabs in here to do the top one or the bottom one. Take a mental note, a picture, mark it with a pen, whatever you want to do. Just make sure you put it back in there the way it goes. All right. So get my cords all fixed here. Okay. These might be difficult to get out when the bike gets hot and cold. They get difficult to get out. Okay, so we're just going to take this. I'm just going to toss it to the side for now. Probably. Do that. Throw it in the air box where it isn't going to go anywhere. Okay, so now it's out of the way. In this crank arm, there's a woodruff key. That's what actually holds your magneto on. That's a woodruff key. Don't lose that. Another small piece. I put it in a magnetic dish, just so I don't lose it. Along with that ball bearing for the clutch. Okay, there's no particular order for doing any of this stuff. We could have done that last, right before we split the case. We could have, you know, it doesn't really matter. It's just personal preference. I just work my way around the motor until I get everything off of it. Now I'll get the sprocket off, and I'll show you some tricks for getting that off too, if you don't already know. All right, next we're gonna take off the countershaft sprocket. So a couple different ways you can do that. I already lifted the tab. You just use a flat blade screwdriver and a hammer or a mallet. I have a mallet. And you can take the chain off and you can bunch it up in here to lock the sprocket up, which I will do from time to time. Or you can just shove something in the rear wheel, and I just take an impact and bust it loose. So, not that difficult. It's probably better to take the chain off and then and do like the bound up method in here, so that you can, while that's loose, I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can do it either way. I'll pop this master link off as soon as I find it real quick. So I've probably passed it before. There it is. Probably passed it a bunch of times already. Just because the camera's running. All right. That out of there. Put this master link up real quick. Pull this countershaft sprocket. There we go. All right. Yep, pop that carb out now. Take this cable out. That's just a clutch cable. And this we will just let hang. I think I emptied the gas. Yep. All right. So that's done. We'll take this upper hose clamp off and we'll get that top end off. Almost ready to pull the motor. Feel free to fast forward to any part of the video if you don't need any of this stuff. Just skip through. Spark plug out. I use a 13/16. Now they say you have to pull the power valve cover off the front of the motor to get the cylinder off without loosening the motor mounts. And they're right, you do. But we're gonna pull the whole motor, so I may as well just loosen the motor mounts and pop the jug off and lay the cover on. I'm sitting here thinking, and I'll go ahead and pull that power valve cover, because I'm going to take that power valve out and clean it anyways. You know, since I'm here, I may as well. I'm going to use an 8mm end wrench to pop these 4 cover plate bolts off. Right here in the front of the cylinder. Okay, honestly, it was easier to just pull the front motor mount and the lower motor mount and lift the motor, pull the motor up to get that top bolt out. Now, when you pull that plate out, there's a little pin right here, okay, and that pin locks the rod that your power valve actuates on. So don't lose that pin. That pin is very important. Your power valve likely will not work properly without that pin in there. Right, so I'm going to try and grab it now before I lose it. I need a pair of pliers. So I can get my fat fingers in there to get it. Yeah. So this is that little pin. It goes in the cover and in the cylinder. Put it in a magnetic dish with your other small pieces that you don't want to lose. Okay. Pretty basic stuff so far with the top end. I know the meat and potatoes of this is splitting the cases, and I'm sure whoever's watching this just wants me to get to splitting the cases. So we're moving on. We're moving on. Pop this jug off. Stick the hose. Oh, that's right, there's no crank or no clutch in it. I'm trying to stay out of the view of the camera, so I'm reaching over the bike. Alright. You'll notice we did not pull the head off. Don't need to. Appointment. You're welcome to pull the head off if you want. I don't. Unless I feel like I want to replace the gaskets, the O-rings, but they're not leaking, so I don't see any reason to fuck with it. Since we got the push rod out and the clutch, we did that earlier with the ball bearing and all that, and we took the cable off, this guy will come out. Okay. This sleeve, I don't know if we can get it out now. It's all right. I mean, from here, I could take the piston out, which would probably be a good idea. So the motor's not all rocking around when you're trying to pull those pins out. I'll pull the piston. It's a tight area, so it's going to be hard for me to try and get the camera in there and my hands, so I'll just try to explain it. If I wasn't splitting these cases, I would say immediately stuff a rag down around here where nothing can drop down in that bottom end. But I'm splitting the cases, so I don't really give a shit if something drops down there. It still would be a good habit to just throw a freaking... Okay. I'll just throw a rag in there. It's not that hard. Follow the rules. Be a good example. My mom always said. Okay. Wrap the thing up. This will also kind of help hold that connecting rod still for you while you're... Put probably too much in there, but that's okay. All right, now I'll pull these circlips. They have a circlip installer tool, which I don't have. I do it by hand, and it hurts my fingers, but I'll show you how to do it. But if you can get that circlip installer tool, man, it'll make your life a lot easier. If I'm able to get this with these. I'm a little rough with this stuff because I'm going to replace it anyways. I'm not going to put this piston back in here, obviously. That's be pretty dumb. It's only got a few hours on it, but I'll replace all of it. All right, so that's with the sea of pistons. Something I like to do is I'll take a marker and I'll write down the hours on the piston skirt of when I took it out. I can get back to that. Thing's not going to run, so. But that's what I do. I do that I did that on the crank that I pulled out of this bike. I did it at 154.4 hours. It's written on the crank. That's just so that I know. So when I go to sell it, I can show like. I've done maintenance on this thing, you know, I take care of it. All right. Yeah, so from here, I mean, we can pretty much pull the motor now and get into the meat and potatoes of this deal while you're actually here. Okay, so I just have the swing arm axle nut to take out to pull the motor. So 17 mil. Blast it out. You'll have to forgive all the background noise. I'm not gonna lie, I live in the freaking ghetto. This place is ghetto as hell, but the rent is cheap. Makes moto doable for us, you know. We're not, that's why I do this stuff, because I ain't rich, man. I ain't got the money to pay somebody $500 to take a motor apart and put it back together for me when I can do it myself. You know? Oh. Alright. I hope that's a good image, man. I can't tell. I don't know. My phone says it's okay. We'll go with it. Alright. So, still got a few more things to disassemble on here. The use of a screw gun or a light will really be helpful for you. Because like I said, I don't have an engine stand or You know, I didn't make a metal box or a wooden box to put my motor in, so it's gonna be a little jerry rig for me. One second. I didn't think it was going the wrong way there for a second. Should have done this in the bike, because these things are a pain. It's almost there. Try to put bolts back in places as often as possible too. All right. That. Put my 8 back on. Get this reed block out. Piece of gasket, liquid gasket from between the cases. All right. So I don't pull the bolts out right away. Pull them out strategically and place them until I memorize like where the tall ones and short ones are at. That one didn't even need to come out, I don't think. Nope. So I'm gonna go back in. On the 65, you don't have to pull the impeller. I did it, I don't know what time ago, but yeah, you don't have to pull the impeller. It will it'll come out with this cover. Okay, so I got all my bolts out in their chronological orders. I'll try and, I should have did this part inside the bike too, damn it. Make sure I got everything. Not missing anything. Oh, I need to get the drain bolt. There we go. Okay, case covers off. Alright, so I'll turn this towards you so you can point out a couple things. And that is reusable, by the way. So, let me check your this. Good. So down here, you see that that's that oil that was still left in the motor. Okay. So down here is the shift shaft, okay? And try and get a better angle here. I'll unplug the GoPro. gonna be hard to see. Try to use this pointer. If you look back here, you can see a spring back here rested against the case. Okay, you're gonna wanna pay attention to the way that that's in there before you pull this shaft out, which I'm gonna pull it out here in just a second. But you see how it touches the case back here on this lip for the bolt, touches the lip back there. Remember that, because when you go to put it back together, it'll drive you batshit crazy trying to figure out how that goes, because when you pull this out, it's a free-for-all. The thing just flops around. That's that spring right there. This one. Okay. It goes against this tab right here, and then this part goes against the case. And sometimes when you pull that cover off, this will try to come with it, or if something's pushing against that shaft on this side, it'll try and come out. So just be careful. Plug this GoPro back in. We're almost there, people. We're gonna split this bitch tonight. Okay, so onward. Got some leakage. Alright. I'll go ahead and get the shaft off. I'm gonna grab some tools and I'll be back. Okay, so I went ahead off camera and went ahead and busted this crank nut loose on this for this primary drive gear. Normally there would be a clutch basket in here, and on the back of the basket, I kind of got it buried on parts, is a flywheel, and you can take and put a like a penny or a quarter between the two gears. So if you're going to go left, so you're going to go from the top, right? And that's going to jam these gears up, and it's going to allow you to loosen this nut. I don't have that ability because the clutch won't stay in there. It's not tight, so I had to use a screwdriver and a rag so I don't damage the mating surface for the cylinder, and jam up the crank so I could bust that loose. And I just wanted to do it off camera real quick before I made myself look like an idiot. So that's loose. I used my impact to loosen it. Pull that off. All this crap's got Loctite on it, so you're gonna want to get yourself a tube of Loctite. It'll tell you to use red Loctite. I'll use blue because I don't like dealing with red Loctite on things like this that can strip out and get stuck in there. My personal preference, once again, this video is not the correct way to do it, it's just the way I do it. So heed the warning, you do it however you want. So in order to get the transmission out, we have to take this idler gear out. So a pair of snap ring pliers, and these things are always fun. I'm gonna turn this towards me. Just separate the snap ring. If not, all right, I had to turn the camera off and face it towards the main boiler, but it's off. Snap ring pliers, you get the idea. There's a washer behind this, so just be careful when you're pulling everything off. You can get everything with it, and then I try to keep everything together as much as possible and in the order that it goes. Okay. Kickstarter. Okay, notice the horseshoe end is in the pit, and then the pin is in the hole. Okay, take the pin out, everything comes out. So it goes in, horseshoe goes in the pit, rotate the pin around. Okay, and then the hammer goes in there. I'll go over that on the assembly part. Okay. These two screws right here are just to hold the bearing in. The bearing comes, you have to push the bearing out from the inside, which we'll go over all that when I take the bearing. Same thing here. To separate the cases, you don't have to take that out. That's just holding the seal in. Okay, get this out of here. All right. you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did I count that one? We'll start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 Allen wrenches, Allen bolts to take out, and I believe those are 5 mils. I can't find my 5 mil. Just busting them loose right now. Okay, so short, long, short on the inside. I'll straighten all this up so it's nice and neat and organized, and so that I know what's what when I'm done here. Okay, so all of our bolts are out of it. We're ready to split it. It's a Tusk crankcase splitter. Real easy to use. 3 posts. Try and give you a little bit of an overview of it. Alright. Each one of your legs is going to go into a stator cover hole. Okay, just kind of span them out evenly around the case, and then obviously the crank's in the center of it. Okay, so that might be the wrong one. There it is. The kit comes with bigger posts and smaller posts. I just forget which ones to use. The nuts are there to help like ensure that it stays tight, but realistically, if you just screw the thing down until it bottoms out, it ain't going nowhere. I mean, you do want the splitter to be as centered on the crank as possible, but you can, you know, manipulate it with moving the arms. So, which we will. We're pretty close right now. Once again, this may be like, it might take a little bit to, yeah, I'm gonna tighten those down. I don't like the way that's moving. Right. Let me get a 10 mil. Okay, that'll help keep it from moving around. Okay, double check before you start. Make sure you got all the bolts out, because you will fuck some shit up using this splitter if you have a bolt left in it. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. All 11 are out. And this is, it's nerve-wracking, like, I mean, to be honest, you know, it's pretty tight, you know. I just go slow. And you can watch it start to split. It's already starting to split, I can see the gap. Okay, and sometimes you can tap it with a mallet, try and help it along, you know, loosen it up. Tap it with a mallet, kind of help loosen up that back a little bit, a little more. There we go. It's going to make all kinds of pops and cracks and noises and such that are going to make you think you screwed something up, but it's just the way it goes. Remember, that crank is kind of pressed into there, you know, press fit. It's coming. Front's going to pop again. So we're getting there. You can see it separating. You know, I don't want to damage this crank because this crank's going back in. It's a $600 crank. I don't want to screw it up. Ideally, you just want to make sure that the thing is splitting, you know, as evenly as possible. Bottom, yeah, bottom's coming apart. Okay. We should be good. Getting easy now. If you're gonna pry it all, pry right back here where you're not on the sealing surface, where the axle goes through. Back here and behind it, that is not the sealing surface. The sealing surface is in front of it. So if you're going to pry anywhere, and I use the whole screwdriver now, I don't use the flat side of it, I use the whole round side to pop that back part loose. Do not shove screwdrivers in there and fuck up the mating surface. Okay? Oh shit, the bearing came out with it. That's not good. Oh man, I have to save that for another video. That sucks. All right, we'll come back to that. So in your transmission. Make sure you guys can see. Sort of. I'm losing light here, I know. So you have your output shaft where your sprocket goes. Counter shaft, well, that's the counter shaft, just the main shaft. Shift drum, you'll see each one of these forks rides in a certain pin groove. The top groove is this top one. This washer, it has a, this is real finicky when you put it back together. There's a C-clip down here at the bottom that keeps this pin from going all the way through because it uses it on the shift linkage as well. And it makes it a real pain in the ass to get the forks back in the transmission and back into the case. So we'll go over that on assembly, but you just got to pull these pins out like so, and then set this down. One shift fork. You don't want to get any of these washers or on the transmission out of place. The thing will not shift, it will not work right if you don't get that right. Come on. Really, it's just this front shaft I need to come out. Let it go. Okay, so real quick, I forgot to cover when I pulled the transmission out because I was fumbling with it. This is your shift drum, okay? And nothing holds it in there. Okay? It's just the cases hold it in there. It's just kind of pushed in, and you just kind of have to wiggle it a little bit, and it'll come out, okay? I took that out. Well, I took that back. I took out this fork on this side first, on the main shaft, the single fork. I took that post and fork out, and then I wiggled the shift drum and pulled it out, which allowed me to pull all of the gears and everything out. So that's how I got it out. And I forgot to tell you guys that. All right, I was gonna save this for a different video, but I decided to go ahead and put it in this video because, well, it's just kind of part of this project and somebody else might run into the same problem. So I went ahead and took the time to install the bearing removal tool. I'll put a link in the description for this. I just got this at Harbor Freight, and yeah, there's videos online on how to use them and everything, so I'm not going to go over that. But basically just tie it in the rod, and if you got it on there right, the bearing should come off. So let's give it a go. I'll try to stay out of the way as much as possible. Hard to hold. Switch sides. It's getting easier. Oh yeah, look. You can see it's pulling that bearing off slowly but surely. Having the right tools, man, it really helps. There we go. And it's off. Wow, that bearing was getting hot too. Hot spot. Okay. Now I'll finish the video with getting the crank out of the other case half. And then after that, it'll be on to part 2, which is putting everything back together. I did notice in when I was looking at some of the video that there's a part where I had the camera on the ground over here, looking up at the bike, and it was super dark. I couldn't see anything. So what I was doing was I was taking this cover off that goes over the cylinder to access the base nut in there, and just removal of the rod for the power valve, and that's it. That's all that it was I was just pulling this cover up. This cover right here goes on here, and I just was pulling that off to expose the nut. That's all. That's all you missed in that. Okay, so let me get my case splitter and we'll pop the crank out. Alright, so this should be the last step in the process to pull that crank out. I went ahead and installed the case splitter back onto the crank, as you can see. And all we're going to do is we're going to lift that case off the crank. Use a VP can to drop the other end of the crank arm into the VP can, an old one. And so we'll give it a go, see what we get. Hopefully we don't get another bearing with it. Yeah, it's coming out. Looks like we're gonna get the bearing with it. Oh, bearing stayed. It does look pretty grimy though. Alright, and that is pretty much the end of the video. Yeah, let me know what you think. Got any questions, let me know. And we'll do a part 2 to put it back together. That's the even more fun part. Some tips and tricks there too. So, alright, thanks.